The tropics are heating up. I know, this is a bit crazy. So first of all, Fiona has brought the ACE in the Atlantic to about 58. This is below the climatological average at this point, which is usually 85. But considering that at the beginning of September we were at 3 ACE units, this is pretty impressive how we managed to catch up so much. Before Fiona we were only at 32, but again, we are well below average, but we are catching up quickly. Our ACE values were very briefly at the smidge above average in early June when Alex fought, and in early July we had both Bonnie and Colin. However, as we know, the basin then went quiet. The season started later than average. It started on June 5th. Usually, the season starts June 1st. The latest start to a season since 2014 as well. July sees 2 storms that exist from July 1st to 3rd. Then the Atlantic basin goes quiet for 60 days. For the first time, August sees no tropical cyclones since 1977, and only the 3rd time in the satellite era. Now, in 1997, there was an El Nino which suppressed activity, but 1961 still saw 5 major hurricanes. But they were, of course, in September and October and, those months. So 1961 still wound up being a pretty bad season. They actually thought that there were 7 major hurricanes, which would tie it with 2005 for the most, but a reanalysis in 2019 put it down to 5. Don't worry though, 2020 would eventually tie 2005 with 7 major hurricanes as well, so 2005 is not the lone record holder in that anymore. But again, it was because of the storms in September and October and later. And what we see now is we have Hurricane Fiona, which slammed through Puerto Rico. Now, the death toll is only at 4 as of right now. The death toll is only at 4 right now. However, that death toll is surely going to rise. I've seen unconfirmed reports of 14 instances in Puerto Rico alone, which would bring the death toll up to 18 when factoring everything else. I just wanted to see if I could find something to confirm it, which I haven't done yet. It did sideswap Bermuda, but Bermuda got off relatively lightly. But what I think everyone is starting to worry about now is Atlantic Canada. This storm will go extratropical before making its way to Atlantic Canada. But that doesn't really mean anything in terms of its impacts because non-tropical cyclones can cause hefty damage. For example, Sandy was extratropical by the time it made landfall in New Jersey, and yet the storm still caused $65 billion in damage, claimed over 100 lives in the Northeast, and brought widespread devastation and destruction in the area. It will become the 2nd costliest tropical cyclone at the time, but would since be demoted to 3rd by Harvey, to 4th by Irma, to 5th by Maria, and into 6th by Ida. All of this would make 2012 briefly the 2nd costliest tropical cyclone season, but has since been demoted to 4th because 2017 and 2021 have surpassed it. And speaking of Ida caused about half of the deaths and $20 billion in damage, so around 50 deaths and $20 billion in damage in the Northeast as an extratropical system, simply really at that point as just a cold front. But the cold front, in addition to bringing tornadoes, brought very damaging and deadly flash flooding, and the city simply could not handle it. The ground could not absorb the water fast enough for it to go into basin apartments, causing 13 deaths in the city itself, 11 in basin apartments, and killing 3 upstate. The total death toll in New York was 18 people, with 30 deaths in neighboring New Jersey and a death in Connecticut, hence why we have that nearly 50 people died in the New York greater metropolitan area. Anyway, as far as As far as Fiona goes, I don't think Fiona will be quite that devastating, but me and a couple of other people on Twitter actually got into a big fight over how bad Juan was. Fiona could be worse than Juan. Juan caused 8 deaths and $200 million in damage. And to an American, you would just scoff it off, saying minor storm, minor storm. But in Canada, a storm like that is actually a really big deal. Nova Scotia has less infrastructure in place because it has a sparser population and fewer people live there. Meaning that when storms like this do happen, it's comparable to, I don't know how to compare it to a U.S. storm because we haven't had any of them in that exact category in a while. Maybe comparable to Matthew in terms of Matthew's impacts. Hence why Juan got retired, though. I think if Juan happened now, it wouldn't have been retired. I mean, even Igor was retired for causing the same amount of damage, $200 million, but only causing 4 deaths, of which only 3 were even in Canada. But again, those storms, they really can wind up causing great damage, even though the numbers don't exactly show for it. And this Atlantic Canada impact could be similar to Dorian, but they would be spared, honestly, if it was similar to Dorian. Dorian didn't cause any deaths, and it only caused about $100 million in damage across Canada. So if a storm like that were to happen, it would, again, come off as relatively minor amount of impact. I don't think it's going to happen. I think given it's going to be more of a head-on at probably Cat 2 to 3 strength, I do foresee heavy amount of impact occurring as a result. I don't want to exactly say how much, but I do think lives will be lost, and I do think there will be quite some property damage, which might get Fiona retired on its own if the PR impacts don't cause it to be retired, which, hey, they honestly might not be. We might not see enough PR impacts for it to be retired, either because the U.S. isn't requested or because the request can go denied, like the request to retire Hannah in 2008, which again, if you look at the numbers, 500 deaths, why wouldn't it be retired? Well, it wouldn't be retired because Hannah, while it seemed devastating, the effects don't really look that way when you look at how Haiti's handling of tropical cyclones. The same with Fiona. After Puerto Rico, after Maria, Puerto Rico really can't handle these storms well, which makes the supposed impact really not as much as it inflates the impact that there otherwise would be if there was no Maria. We know how bad a Category 4 directly striking Puerto Rico was. Fiona was only a Cat 1, but has since intensified into a Cat 4, briefly dropped back to Cat 3, and is now a Cat 4 again, at least as of the 11 a.m. Eastern Time report today, September 23rd. So, oh God, it's warm. It's supposed to be cold today. I guess it warmed up. Fiona would wind up at one point being predicted to hit the United States, but it got kind of curved up by this high pressure that's actually bringing the coldest air since early May over areas like the New York metropolitan area. I mean, last night, low temperatures this morning got down to about 50 degrees, which again, values like that we did see on May 25th and 26th, but before that we really haven't seen since May 10th, and the high in the low 60s. We haven't seen a high that cold since May 8th across the area. Although if it winds up making it to the mid 60s, we did see that on May 19th. So again, this cold air is in place, and that is going to, in a way, bring the storm further east, which is funneling it directly into Canada. And a post-tropical depression could even hit Greenland, which could cause another winter storm there, like what happened with Larry. God, wearing all black was such a mistake. There's sweat bubbling in my pants right now. I should have just worn lighter colors. Long sleeve shirt and pants, yes, but it's the colors, because I can feel the way that the heat is getting absorbed intensely. And God, I think this could happen in September, but clearly it can. Don't wear all black if you're not in the winter, kids. Just don't. But this video is not just about Fiona. I don't think Gaston is up to any trouble, but Tropical Depression 9, I think, is something very concerning. Tropical Depression 10, I really don't think we have anything to worry about that, at least as of right now, because it's literally just off the coast of Africa. But Tropical Depression 9 at this point is forecast to make a Cat 2 landfall in southwest Florida, similar-ish to where Irma struck, as a Cat 3 actually, but as a Cat 2. This storm could bring quite a bit of damage, and we don't know where it's going to strike because we don't know where the ridge is going to be. Also, the sea surface temperatures there are immaculately warm. They're in the mid-80s right now. This is going to give a lot of fuel for a growing storm to, well, eat up. Now, again, I'm not sure what happens off of this, but it can't be good. Which is why the best case scenario for impact would be for the storm to take on a track of Bonnie, because at that point it'll be the weakest. And even though we might see some deaths, Bonnie caused 5 people to die. This is the best case scenario, but it isn't being predicted. It's being funneled in a way similar to Hurricane Michael, and while I don't think it'll be a Cat 5, it could still be a Cat 3 to 4 if it goes to the Panhandle. And honestly, if it goes westward into Louisiana, Texas, it could be even worse. However, that being said, it won't really go that far west. The thing that causes that great population divide in the U.S. at the negative 98th meridian is that there's kind of a lack of rain there. The thing about Texas is that once you get past Midland, tropical storms and other storms that come from the Gulf curve east at that point. They curve northeasterly, and there's kind of this lack of incoming moisture from these storms. Hence why cities west of San Antonio really can't survive. It's a stark population divide, really, cast by the rain shadow effect. But these storms can come here, but they can't penetrate further west because most of the time the winds do annoyingly block them. There are some exceptions, however. There are definitely some exceptions. Like, for example, the storm could be like Dolly, whose remnants managed to survive directly over New Mexico, bringing rain as far as Arizona. But I don't foresee that happening. So, that's just my little talk on things. Okay, you can all have a good day. Goodbye.